Recorded it all. Every word. Every threat. Every lie. And I almost didn't. That's the part that still keeps me up at night, how close I came to just letting it go. Again. My stepdaughter, Vera, was 19 years old the night she put her hands on my little sister. 19. Old enough to know better. Old enough to drive herself home from the bar she wasn't supposed to be at. Old enough to look my sister in the eye and say what she said and mean every word of it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My sister Lena is 26, 2 years younger than me. She has this laugh that fills up a room before she even walks into it. Loud, a little unhinged, the kind of laugh that makes strangers smile even when they don't know the joke. She's been my best friend since we were kids, sharing a bedroom in our mom's apartment in Columbus. She's the person I call when something good happens, when something bad happens, when nothing happens at all, and I just need to hear a familiar voice. She came to visit me in late October. She'd been going through a rough patch. A breakup that hit harder than anyone expected. A job switch that left her commuting 40 minutes each way to a new office in Fairfax. She needed a few days of not being in her own apartment. I told her to come. My husband Daniel said, of course. We have a guest room. We have a big kitchen. Come. She arrived on a Thursday with 2 tote bags and a bottle of wine, and we stayed up until midnight just talking at the kitchen table the way we used to when we were teenagers, sneaking cups of instant coffee we were too young to be drinking. Everything was fine. Everything was good. Vera wasn't home that first night. She had her own apartment by then. Daniel had helped her get set up after she finished her first year at community college. She came by the house sometimes for dinner, for laundry, sometimes just to sit on the back porch and scroll through her phone while Daniel grilled. It was never warm between us. We both knew it, and neither of us pushed it. There was a version of this situation where Vera and I could have been fine. It just never happened. She'd been against us from the beginning. Daniel and I started dating 3 years after his divorce from her mom, which by anyone's measure is a reasonable amount of time. Vera was 15 when we met. 15 is hard under perfect circumstances. 15, with a new woman in your dad's house, is its own specific kind of hard. And I knew that. And I tried to give her room. But there's a difference between a teenager who's going through something and a teenager who's decided you're the enemy. Vera had decided. She never outright said it. She was too smart for that. She'd just disappear mid-conversation, give these answers that were technically polite and completely empty. Look through me at family dinners like I was a piece of furniture she resented having to work around. Daniel would say, "She just needs time." And I believed him for a while. Then a while became years and I stopped believing it and started just managing it. Lena knew all of this. She'd heard every version of every story. She knew to keep it light around Vera, not to push, to just exist in the same space without making a thing of it. What she didn't know, what I had no reason to warn her about, was that Vera had been drinking before she came over that Saturday night. I'd been at the grocery store. We were making dinner. A big pot of chili, the kind that takes a few hours and makes the whole house smell like something good is happening. Daniel was out getting the kids from his brother's place, his nephews, who he watches some weekends. It was just Lena in the house. I got the call when I was in the parking lot, bags already in the trunk. It was Lena. And I could tell immediately something was wrong because she didn't say anything for a second, just breath. "Hey," she said. "Hey, I'm okay. I need you to come home." I drove 14 minutes and 10. She was in the kitchen when I got there, sitting at the table with a dish towel pressed to the side of her face. There was a red mark along her cheekbone, starting to swell. Her hands were shaking, the way hands shake after adrenaline, when your body doesn't know it's over yet. I put my hands on her face and made her look at me. I asked her what happened. She told me. Vera had let herself in with the key Daniel gave her. She'd walked into the living room and found Lena asleep on the couch. Lena had been taking a nap before dinner, and something about that, a woman sleeping in her father's house, had flipped a switch. Lena woke up to Vera standing over her, already going, calling her things I won't repeat, saying she knew what I was doing, that I'd been replacing her, that Daniel was going to cut her off because of me. Lena tried to stay calm. She said she tried to explain who she was, that she was my sister, that she was just visiting. Vera wasn't hearing it, and then Vera grabbed the side of her face. One grab. Fingernails. That was enough to leave a mark. Lena pushed her away and Vera left. Just walked out the same door she came in. I sat there for a moment after Lena finished. Just sat there with my hand on the table. I took a breath. Did she know who you were? I asked. Like, did she figure it out? I told her, Mina said. She didn't care. That was the moment. That was the thing that shifted something in me. Because this wasn't a mistake. It wasn't confusion or misunderstanding. Vera knew who my sister was, and she did it anyway, and then she walked out like it was nothing. I took out my phone and called Daniel. He didn't answer. I called again. Voicemail. I texted, come home now. It's not an emergency, but it's serious. Please come home. Then I did something I almost didn't do. Something I almost talked myself out of. I opened my voice memo app, hit record, set the phone face down on the kitchen counter. I called Vera. She picked up on the third ring. She sounded like she was in a car, music low in the background. What? She said. Not a question. I need you to come back to the house, I said. Silence. Then, why? Because what happened tonight needs to be talked about, and I'm asking you as an adult to come back and do that. More silence. I didn't do anything wrong. There it was. You put your hands on my sister, I said. My voice was completely calm. I don't know how. She has a mark on her face. I need you to come back to the house. She was in my dad's house, Vera said. I didn't know who she was. She told you who she was, I said. I didn't know who she was, I said. Vera didn't say anything. She told you and you did it anyway, I said. Come back to the house, Vera. She hung up. I stood in the kitchen for about 30 seconds. Then I picked up my phone, went into the voice memos, checked the recording. Clear as a bell. Her voice. My voice. Every word. Lena was watching me from the table. What are you doing? She asked. I don't know yet, I said, but I'm not letting this disappear. That's the thing nobody tells you about situations like this. The real danger isn't the incident. The incident is already done. The real danger is what happens after. The way things get softened and contextualized and slowly, quietly buried. I had watched Daniel explain Vera's behavior for 4 years. I had watched him find the most generous possible interpretation of everything she did. He loved her. She was his daughter. I understood it. I had never asked him to choose, but this was Lena's face. Daniel came home 40 minutes later. He walked in and saw Lena at the table, and the expression on his face. He went pale. He crossed the room and crouched down to look at her and said, "What happened?" And I told him, all of it, calmly, completely, without editorializing. Just the facts in the order they happened. He was quiet for a long time when I finished. "Where's Vera now?" he asked. "I don't know," I said. "She wouldn't come back." He took out his phone. I watched him call her. Watched him wait. She didn't pick up for him either. "I'm going to talk to her," he said. "Daniel?" I said. "I've recorded our conversation. I need you to hear it before you talk to her." He looked at me. "I'm not doing this to start something," I said. "I'm doing this because I already know how this conversation is going to go if you don't." He was quiet. Then he nodded. I played him the recording. He sat at the kitchen table and listened to his daughter say she didn't do anything wrong. Listened to her say she didn't do anything wrong. Listened to her say she didn't know who Lena was. Listened to the part where I told her that Lena had identified herself and she'd done it anyway, and she went silent. He listened to all of it without saying a word. When it was done, he set his hands flat on the table. "She lied to me," he said. "I know," I said. "She's told me before that you make things up. When you two argue. She's said that." I felt something cold move through me, but I kept my face still. "I know she has," I said. "I didn't." He stopped, pressed his mouth together. I believed her. I didn't know what to say to that, so I didn't say anything. He called her again. This time she picked up. I'm not going to transcribe that conversation because it was between a father and his daughter, and despite everything, some things stay private. What I will say is that I could hear her voice through the phone from across the table, and it started loud and got quiet and then stopped for a long time. Daniel did most of the talking. At the end, he said, "Tomorrow, 10 o'clock. You're going to apologize to her face." Then he hung up. He looked at Lena. "I'm sorry," he said. "I am so sorry this happened in my house." Lena, who had been sitting quietly through all of this, nodded. Her hands had finally stopped shaking. That night, after Lena had gone to bed, Daniel and I sat in the kitchen for a long time. The chili never got made. We ordered pizza. We ate it cold, mostly, because neither of us was really hungry. He told me things I hadn't known. That Vera had been telling him for about a year. That I'd been telling him for about a year. That I'd been trying to push her out. That I kept starting things and then acting innocent. That I complained about her constantly behind his back. None of it was true. Not even a version of it was true. And I had no way to prove it, which I think she knew. It had been working. He'd started watching me differently. Waiting for me to confirm what she'd been saying, I thought about all the times I'd let things go. All the times I'd pulled back to keep the peace. All the times I'd thought staying quiet was the safer choice. I didn't record that call to prove anything about her. I said, I recorded it because I needed one time for the truth to stay in the room. He was quiet for a moment. Then, I know. I need you to know that too, I said. Not just say it. I know, he said again, but differently. The next morning, Vera came at 10. She looked like she hadn't slept. Her hair was pulled back, no makeup, a gray hoodie. She looked young. She looked like someone who'd spent the night with the reality of what she did, and it hadn't been comfortable. Lena was already up. She'd showered, changed, put on enough concealer that the mark wasn't visible unless you were looking for it. She sat down at the kitchen table and folded her hands and waited. Vera stood in the doorway for a second. Then she came in and sat across from her. I stood by the counter. Danielle stood beside me. What happened next? I won't dress it up or make it into something cinematic. Vera apologized. It was halting and imperfect, and there were a couple of moments where it almost tipped into justification before she caught herself. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was real. I could tell the difference. I've heard Vera say words she didn't mean before. This wasn't that. Lena accepted it. She's more gracious than I would have been. After Vera got up to leave and she stopped at the door and looked at me. Just looked. I didn't know what she was expecting. I didn't say anything. She left. That afternoon, Daniel and I talked about what comes next. Not in a crisis mode way, not fighting. Just, what does this actually look like going forward? Vera agreed, as a condition of things, to start seeing a therapist. Not because any of us forced her. Daniel had suggested it. Carefully, and she'd said yes. I think some part of her was tired too. 4 years is a long time to keep something going that isn't working. She doesn't come to the house as often now. When she does, it's different. Not warm, not close, but different. Like there's a line she's finally decided not to cross. Maybe that's the best version of this. I've stopped waiting for something better. Lena went home on Monday. She called me from the car when she got back to her apartment, the way she always does, so I know she made it okay. She sounded normal. She sounded like herself. You doing okay? She asked, which is so like her, to check on me after what happened to her. Yeah, I said. I think so. Good, she said. Because you were kind of terrifying, you know that? I laughed. It surprised me how easy it came. I just needed the truth to stay in the room, I said. It stayed, she said. There's something I think about sometimes, late at night when the house is quiet. I think about all the versions of that day where I didn't hit record, where I let myself believe that saying it out loud would be enough, that Daniel would hear me, that Vera would finally be held to something real. I think about how many times before that I had exactly that kind of faith, and how it kept not being enough. I don't think I'm a confrontational person. I don't like conflict. I spent 4 years trying to be the version of myself that didn't cause problems, that absorbed things quietly and kept moving. I thought that was what you did when you loved someone and their family was complicated. But there's a version of keeping the peace that's really just giving people permission to keep doing what they're doing. And I let that go on long enough. My sister had a mark on her face. Some things you don't absorb. Some things you record. If you've ever been in a situation where you knew the truth but had no way to make it stay, where you said what happened and watched someone find the version they preferred, I want you to know that you're not crazy. You're not dramatic. The thing you saw happened. The thing you felt was real. And sometimes the most important thing you can do isn't to fight louder. It's to make sure there's something in the room that doesn't disappear when the conversation's over. I'm still learning that. But I think I'm finally learning it. I thought a lot about what would have happened if I hadn't hit record. Probably the same thing that had been happening for 4 years. Daniel would have listened to my side, then listened to Vera's, and somewhere in the space between the two he would have found a version that was easier to hold. Not because he's a bad person. Because that's what we do when we love someone and the alternative is too painful to sit with. We find the kinder story. We round the edges. We let things settle. And I would have watched it happen and said nothing. Because I trained myself to say nothing. Because I thought that was how you kept a family from breaking. What I understand now is that staying quiet wasn't keeping anything intact. It was just letting the cracks go unexamined. A house can look fine from the outside for a long time before the foundation gives. What Vera did to Lena wasn't an accident. It wasn't a misunderstanding or a bad moment or a phase she needed to grow out of. It was the end result of years of a story she'd been telling. About me, about our marriage, about who belonged and who didn't, and nobody had ever made that story cost her anything. So she kept telling it. She got more comfortable. And eventually, comfort turned into confidence. And confidence turned into walking into a house and putting her hands on someone. That's how it works. Not all at once. Just slowly, incrementally, until something that would have been unthinkable becomes ordinary. I don't say that to assign blame cleanly. Vera had her own pain. The divorce, the years of adjustment, all of it. Pain is real and it matters. But pain is not a permission slip. It never has been. The fact that something hurt you doesn't entitle you to hurt other people and then lie about it afterward. That's not a complicated idea. It's something most of us figured out before we finished elementary school. What I keep coming back to is the intelligence it takes to protect yourself without becoming something you don't recognize. Because the easy thing, the thing I wanted to do in the parking lot when Lena called me, was to burn everything down, to call Daniel screaming, to show up at wherever Vera was and make a scene she'd remember. I wanted to. I really did. But a reaction like that wouldn't have given me the truth staying in the room. It would have just given Vera more evidence for the story she'd already been telling about me. So I breathed. I drove home. I hit record. I let her say in her own voice exactly what she'd done and exactly how little she thought it mattered. That's what I mean when I say intelligence matters here. Not cleverness. Not strategy. Just the clarity to know that the way you respond to something wrong can either make the truth visible or bury it completely. I had one shot at this. I needed to not waste it on volume. The courage part came after. Sitting across from Daniel and playing him that recording, knowing he might still choose not to hear it. That took something. Letting Lena sit at that table and wait for an apology she deserved but had no guarantee of getting. That took something too. Doing the right thing doesn't always feel brave in the moment. Sometimes it just feels like holding still when everything in you wants to run. I'm not the same person I was before that Saturday. I don't think I could go back to being her if I tried. She was patient in a way that had started to look a lot like disappearing. I don't want to disappear anymore. I want to be in the room. I want the truth to be in the room with me. Lena called me last week just to catch up. She sounded like herself. That big, slightly unhinged laugh. Full volume, no hesitation. That's how I know she's okay. That's how I know I made the right call.